So this is one of my sigils from a while ago. I can't remember how long ago now, maybe a year ago, updated. I was just asked a question, what the purpose of it was. Was that you, Rahul? Is that how to pronounce your name? Rahul? Raoul? I'm not quite sure. Okay, you asked what the purpose of this sigil was, and my answer to you was, it's not necessarily easy to give it a one word or one phrase purpose or reason, because as with all magic, all sigils, all symbols, all scrolls, probably each expression, artistic expression, comes to have many meanings and has many meanings to begin with. But for the sake of this, let's focus on it. Ideally, I made this sigil originally in order to express an intention to make this year the year that our wealth, in magical terms, I am assuming that the wealth that is coming to us as a couple, as a family, is our wealth, that the wealth that is coming to us make this year the year that our wealth is coming to us, for or against the grain, despite whatever. Here's something about creating magic or creating sigils, and this is a thing about being smart, S-M-A-R-T, okay? Making a goal or outcome specific, measurable, actionable, something and something. I can't remember. Realistic and timed. I don't necessarily agree in full with all of that. And the reasons why are as follows. You can make your goal about timing, and I understand that one of the things that is true about wizardry as an art that one studies, that I've studied for a long time, is that a large aspect of wizardry is about timing and time. In fact, one of my good wizard friends, a true wizard, his book, which was written by a friend of his, in fact, based on him and his teachings and his life, is actually called The Time Workshops, one Stanley Stewart. The Time Workshops, written by Abriella Jones. That's probably beside the point, and I can tell already that this video is going to end up being longer than I intended, but never mind A. If you make your goal over specific, for instance, attract 143,253,714,212.44444 pence on the 14th and a third of October 2017, which is very specific, you'll fail, because you're being over smart. You're being too clever for your own good. So I'm a fine advocate of the make this year the year that our wealth is in our bank account, and for us to spend freely, happily and willy-nilly. This year meaning any year. I believe that this year is specific enough, and that if we are operating with our higher selves and with our good and the good of our family and friends at heart and in heart, and the good of generally mankind, humankind, womankind, people kind, animal kind, earth kind, universal kind, in heart and at heart, then what? I believe that one's higher self will make that as specific as you need it. If a God truly exists, and if we have a higher nature that has an intelligence about it, then it won't split hairs and insist on exacts and specifics from us, and won't punish us by missing the mark if we're over specific. I believe that we can use an expression like make this year the year that our wealth is finally ours. So this sigil began with that in mind, with the idea of make this year the year that our wealth is finally actually ours. So why would I make such a thing? Do I not actually believe without a sigil, which is what some people will ask me, I know that. Do I not actually believe, have the faith, or am confident that without such a thing as a sigil, that our wealth is actually ours? Do I not already believe that? I do. Of course I do. But I think that there's beauty in art, and I think that the magical way is a great way to do anything. I really enjoy making sigils. I love the lettering and the symbology and the artwork and the colours that are involved. I mean, look at that for a bright rainbow colour. I've put plenty of likes on plenty of other people's sigils as well. I think mine are amazing, and I think that there's a lot of people in these sigil groups whose artworks are absolutely out of this world, astounding. I could list some of the people. There's one, for instance, called Shaman Road, Mexico, whose artworks I find absolutely and totally astounding. And what was that one I've come across a plenty and made comments on? Q phase something, and I've forgotten already. Q phase something. Q phase emoticon. No, it's not emoticon. Q phase
Quanticon. Q phase Quanticon.
You know. Maybe in the comments I'll let you know. Okay, so let's get on with talking about my sigil here and the reason it was put together and what it represents. What I've done is I've got the sigil, as you can see, in the center, okay, and the sigil itself is surrounded by a question of, in red there you can see it, one's spiritual suitability for a life transformation. Now hang on, this is what it's intended to do. It's intended for those of you who enlarge it on screen and actually look at the lettering involved to actually make you go, hang on a minute, what do you mean one's spiritual suitability for a life transformation? Is everybody not spiritually suitable for a life transformation? Are you challenging my suitability for a life transformation? Are you saying that some people aren't spiritually worthy for a life transformation? This is the question that I'm surrounding this sigil with in red. Okay? In order to encourage some of you to actually ask that question. Hang on. Are you calling into question some people's suitability, spiritual suitability for a life transformation? Are we not all actually spiritually worthy, spiritually suitable for a life transformation? Why do I want to do that? Why do I intend to do that? Why am I doing that? Because there's a saying that a question unasked is a question unanswered, and that a spiritual lesson unasked is a spiritual lesson unlearned, and that when you ask a specific question, you get a specific answer. When you ask a question of yourself, of the universe, of your higher self, of the godhood of the universe, the God level of the universe, the spirituality of life at large, you get an answer to that question, even if that is from your own self-fulfilling prophecy level. Is everybody not actually spiritually suitable for a life transformation? The real answer is yes. Everybody is actually spiritually suitable for a life transformation. Life is in constant transformation anyway, and we are all in the midst of life transformation just by living life. Okay? But it's intended first and foremost to ask that question. What has that question got to do with make this year the year that our wealth comes to us now? Well, if you think about it, one's spiritual suitability for a life transformation has everything to do with this year being the year that the wealth that they may not have been confident of coming to them finally. Because your own wealth, our own wealth, each of us as individuals, is centered around life transformation, transformation of ourselves, transformation of our base nature, if you like, into the spiritual gold that we can all be. So, I go on to say, despite negative thinking processes, are we spiritually suitable or worthy of a life transformation? We are all spiritually suitable, spiritually worthy for a life transformation, despite negative thinking processes. This is what I'm saying, despite negative thinking processes, because one of the things that blocks us from actually getting our life transformations, the life transformations that many of us wish for, is the fact that we don't ask about our spiritual suitability or worthiness for a life transformation, and that we also have negative thinking processes. So I'm saying here, are we suitable, spiritually suitable or worthy for a life transformation? Yes, we are, despite negative thinking processes. And I've wrote that in blue, in larger letters, surrounding that question, despite negative thinking processes. That is a sigil, a talisman that I have written on paper. It's framed, it's on my wall, it's on my bedroom wall. This is my bedroom, So, despite negative thinking processes. Next, I've even stated, for any of you, for the reader, for me, for my missus, for my family, for us as a family, as a couple, for any of you that like to read this thought form, like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Okay? Notice, do you? Do you notice how in that particular sentence I've actually used a double negative? Do you notice that? like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. I've used a double negative there. So does that mean that I do believe I am the one, like Neo in the Matrix? Does that actually mean that actually, because I've used a double negative there, that I do believe that I am the one? Is that what that means? Or is that a spelling? Is that a spelling? Is that a spelling mistake? And if so, do you love me more because I've made a mistake? You know, there's a funny thing in NLP that some of us crazy NLP loons, we make up words that are made by parts of one word and parts of another. And some of them can get quite long. You know, I'll give you an example of some of them. But often they're words that if you heard them, you'd go, you know, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, make this year the year that our wealth does actually finally come to us. Is centered around our spiritual worthiness or suitability for a life transformation, despite negative thinking processes like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Okay? Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Each of those phrases means a subtly different thing. Okay, let's move on to the next phrase, again in red. Vorsprung durch Testinglum. What does that mean? I made an NLP program for myself quite a number of years ago that I fished out of my computer recently enough. And what that was for was as follows. I did an NLP practitioner course with Jonathan Clark of, at the time it was called Boss NLP, in Glasgow. Sound dude. Excellent dude. Excellent course. Great fun teacher. As a result of doing that, obviously, I wanted to go on to do NLP Master Practitioner and NLP Trainer. Now, at the time, I'm going to admit something here. At the time, I took out a loan in order to afford to do that course because my income wasn't massive. I live in rural, small town Scotland. And at the time, I lived in one of the smallest towns in this part of Scotland in which I live, a town called Dingwall. Okay, it's pretty small, small-minded as well in large parts. There's amazing people everywhere, and I've got some wonderful friends, wonderful, beautiful friends. But by and large, I've come across quite a lot of small-mindedness. Anyway, I made this program to attract into my life NLP Master Practitioner and NLP Trainer. And the specifics that I made the NLP program at the time for were to bring these trainings into my life within 6 months, despite the fact that I can't afford them. Couldn't afford them at the time. Within that 6 months, I had gained the NLP certificates as a master practitioner and as a trainer with no fewer than 6 different NLP schools. Okay. That particular NLP program that I played to myself, sometimes during the day and sometimes during the night while I was sleeping, was called Vorsprung durch Testing Gloom. Now, where else have you heard the phrase Vorsprung durch? You've heard the phrase Vorsprung durch Technik, Vorsprung durch Technology. Have you not? It's an Audi advert. It's the advert for Audi cars, generally speaking. Vorsprung durch Technology. Okay. Now, I decided to use that because it just means, it's German, and it means forward through, or Vorsprung through testing gloom. What the hell's a testing gloom? A testing gloom is a gloom that tests. It's a gloominess that tests you. It's the negative feelings that you have sometimes when you're hankering for something, when you want something that's out of your reach. You get all despondent and depressed. Well, I was getting all despondent and depressed and frustrated because I wanted to take my NLP studies further, and money, seemingly, at the time, seemed to be a block for me. So I overcame it in the NLP program that I made called Vorsprung durch Testing Gloom. I've explained that clearly enough. So there you have it. Once again, make this year the year that our wealth is actually finally ours. Are we spiritually suitable for such a life transformation? Yeah, because we are spiritually suitable and worthy of such a life transformation, despite the fact that we have negative thinking processes, like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. Oh, what? Does that mean that I am believing that I am the one? Because that's a double negative. Vorsprung durch Testing Gloom. Forward, Vorsprung through the glooms that test. Okay? Here's something else. For any of you that have ever watched Night Watch and Day Watch, the movies, is that a vampire or a vamp can travel in the gloom. Okay? So therefore, a psychic warrior, reference there to Freddy Krueger, a psychic warrior can also travel in the gloom. Okay? Watch Night Watch and Day Watch and some of the Freddy Krueger movies. Okay? Next around that, I have the phrase, an obvious blessing for general progress of health, wealth, and happiness. Just to state the fact that what I'm creating here is an obvious blessing for general progress, not general happiness, health, wealth, and happiness, but general progress, forward movement, growth of health, wealth, and happiness. An obvious blessing for general progress of health, wealth, and happiness. Okay? That's what everything that I do with my sigils and talismans is intended for anybody that looks at them, for anybody that sees them, for anybody that appreciates them and likes them and makes comment, whatever. That's what they're intended to do. That's what they're intended for. I'm a positive life coach. I am into white magic. I'm into white wizardry. Then I said respected arts like NLP, CBT, hypnosis, Huna, hoodoo, life coaching, and others, which are arts that I've studied and have certifications in over the years. Meaning utilizing these arts, and yes, they are arts like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, which I have a certification in, hypnosis, quite well certified in hypnosis. I don't actually use it much, though it's one of my favourites, funnily enough. That's a strange phrase, isn't it? A strange thing to say. I don't use it much, so it's one of my favourites. Okay. Huna, the art that isn't actually Hawaiian. Okay. Hoodoo, I understand things about hoodoo, and yes, I've studied and have a tentative certification in a branch of hoodoo. Life coaching, I've studied life coaching in great depth. I believe I always have been a life coach and a neuro-linguistic programmer long before ever gaining certifications in such, but I have certifications just to back that up, and various others, because I've studied so many things it would be too long to list on here. And I'm one of these that constantly studies everywhere I can get information on, from the library to online courses to live courses in real life with real people, and at college and university. I've also studied the likes of quantum physics at university level. Okay. So I've gone on to say healer wizard, because that's what I intend as. Jason von Breven, that's me, brings you word, W-Y-R-D, word, as in the way of word, Brian Bates, of magical blessings. Healer wizard Jason von Breven brings you word of magical blessings. And there in purple around the outside, I've said, despite that we're in Scotland. Why have I said such a mean thing? Well, because I have experienced aplenty. I could reel off quite a number of experiences I've had. I've experienced aplenty the competitive mindedness, small, petty and parochial mindedness, and meanness that happens locally. And that's not just my opinion either. I've had plenty of conversations in which plenty of people, from housewives and house husbands to educated people, have also said how small and petty-minded and parochial people in Scotland can be. I'm not saying it's necessarily the Scots. I'm not racist in any way, shape or form whatsoever. I mean, I'm married to a Filipina. If I was racist, I certainly wouldn't be married to a Filipina. I have nothing against Scots. In fact, some of my best heart friends are Scottish. I'm not racist. I moved to Scotland when I was 20, so I was only a very young adult, really. And I can't say, other than saying what I've experienced and what I know other people have experienced, about the kind of cynical, small-minded, closed-minded sometimes attitudes that certain people can have. Okay, I've known this, possibly because I'm into subjects that aren't necessarily mainstream. Fair enough, fair enough. I'll put my hands up to that one. So, let's get back to it. My sigil for make this year, not being specific, because being too specific blows it out the water and makes you miss the mark. Well, I should say, being too specific makes it not so easy to hit the mark. Okay. The sigil, the magic of that, is surrounded by the question of one's spiritual suitability for a life transformation, despite negative thinking processes like that you might not be believing you're not the one, but does that mean that you are believing that you are the one? Vorsprung durch testing gloom, forward, forsprung, for springing through the gloom that tests, also knowing that vampires, psychic warriors, and spiritual types can travel, progress, and grow in the gloom and despite a gloom. This obviously being a blessing, an obvious blessing for general progress within matters of health, wealth, and happiness, utilizing respected arts like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis. You all know what hypnosis is. Huna, the Hawaiian that isn't so Hawaiian, art of the so-called Hawaiian shamans and the kahuna that I respect very much. Hoodoo, life coaching, and others. Healer wizard, I am. Jason von Breven, that's me, brings you word, W-Y-R-D, fate, of magical blessings, despite that we're in Scotland. That adds a current theme to it all, despite the fact that we're in Scotland. Scotland is known to be a hard place to make such a business as a spiritual, psychic, healing, wizard-like, sigil-like business. And yet I'm plying that as my trade. And I will continue. Make this year the year that our wealth finally does come to us for our usage of, and our boasting about, and our enjoyment of, and our ego within. Because we are spiritually suitable for a life transformation, despite negative thinking processes like that I'm not believing I'm not the one. But does that mean I believe that I am the one? Vorsprung durch testing gloom, forward, forsprung through the gloom that tests. This is an obvious blessing for general progress, forward movement, growth, word up within matters of health, wealth, and happiness. Utilizing such respected arts like NLP, CBT, hypnosis, Huna, Hoodoo, life coaching, and others. Healer wizard, Jason von Breven, that's me, brings you word of magical blessings, despite that we're in Scotland. Despite that we're in a place that doesn't seem to support such a thing, especially with me being an Englishman originally. Okay? Around that, I've got all sorts of magical writings. I've looked into speaking in tongues, and you know, as somebody who studies and practices aspects of wizardry, I'm not saying I'm a perfect wizard. I'm not perfect in any way. I'm not the perfect wizard. Is there any such a thing? But I am a wizard. I'm my own wizard. I do my own thing. I don't necessarily collect the implements of earth, wind, fire, and water, whatever you want to call that. But I collect my own versions of those implements, and I fashion my own implements of those, my own versions of those implements. Some of the sigillic writings that I do may seem like scribbles to you. They may seem like totally made up, real fast, automatic scribbles to you, and some of them are. But I'm inspired to do things like draw those, what are those sine waves, up and down square type things. That was an intuition that came to me to put around the original sigil as it was until now. Castle ramparts, or whatever you want to call them, squares and stuff, various different shapes, and the writings that I've done there, they all have a meaning. They all have specifics within them. They all have magic within them. But then, as Getafix the Druid said, magic is magic. Magic doesn't have a recipe. It doesn't have a specific technique. It doesn't have a specific. Magic is magic after all. Okay? Now, I reckon that's quite long of an explanation. That's over half an hour.
probably more like 40 minutes. I did say that it goes on, didn't I? So thanks if you've watched this all the way through. Thanks very much. Love it if you'd make comment. I'd love it if you'd look at my other sigils that I put within the sigil groups, and I certainly would like to make business in sigil magic. I would. I have ideas for movies, for series of movies. There you go, there's one of my words, series. I have visions of multiple channels on ordinary TV in sigillic use, specifically for anatomical and physiological healings. Okay, so I'd certainly appreciate some feedback and some ideas and thoughts and encouragements. Sure, I would. I'm going to have to sign off because I know this is going on and I've got plenty of jobs that I should be getting on with today. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rahul, for your question. Thank you.